The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers hissed open with a sound that echoed through the vast hall. Jake Morrison stepped inside first, his black diplomatic suit a stark contrast to the colorful robes and exotic armor worn by the alien delegates already seated around the circular table. Behind him walked Colonel Lisa Barnes, her military uniform crisp and her hand resting casually near her sidearm, and Dr. Peter Kane, clutching a datapad filled with scientific reports that would likely never be discussed today. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, built from materials harvested from a dozen different worlds and designed to accommodate the various atmospheric needs of the Federation's member species. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and holographic displays showed star maps of known space, with Federation territory marked in blue and the contested outer rim territories glowing red. 12 species had sent representatives to this meeting, though Jake knew that only 3 really mattered. The Zephyrians controlled the largest military fleet outside of humanity's own forces. The Altarians dominated trade routes through the core systems. The Vegan Collective possessed technology that could terraform dead worlds in mere decades. The other 9 species were essentially vassals, their votes predetermined by whichever of the big 3 offered them the best deal. Chancellor Vextal of the Zephyrians rose from his seat at the head of the table. His species resembled oversized praying mantises, with chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed under the chamber's artificial lighting. When he spoke, his words came through a universal translator that gave his voice an oddly melodic quality, despite the harsh clicking sounds his mandibles made. "Ambassador Morrison, we welcome you and your delegation to these historic proceedings," Vextal began, spreading his forearms wide in what humans had learned was a gesture of formal greeting among his people. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for your species, an era of peace, prosperity, and guided development under the wise leadership of the Galactic Federation." Jake took his seat without responding to the flowery introduction. He had heard similar speeches from Federation officials for the past 6 months as preliminary negotiations dragged on. Always the same themes: peace, prosperity, and guidance. What they really meant was submission, taxation, and control. Lisa, Barnes sat to his right, her eyes constantly scanning the room for potential threats. Her military training made her naturally suspicious of situations where humanity was outnumbered 12-1, even in supposedly neutral territory. Dr. Kane settled into the chair on Jake's left, already pulling up files on his datapad that contained detailed analysis of every proposal the Federation had floated during the preliminary talks. The Altarian delegate, a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a jellyfish floating in a tank of liquid, began the formal presentation. Its translator gave it a female voice, though Jake knew that Altarians didn't actually have gender in any sense humans would understand. "The Federation offers humanity full membership with all the benefits such status entails," the Altarian announced. "Access to our trade networks, protection under our military umbrella, and participation in our scientific exchange programs. We ask only that Earth demonstrate its commitment to galactic peace and stability." Here it comes, Jake thought. The demands always followed the promises. Vextal activated a holographic display that showed detailed star charts of human-controlled space. Red markers indicated human colonies and outposts that had been established in the outer rim territories over the past 50 years. These were worlds that the Federation claimed but had never actually settled or defended. First, humanity must cease all expansion into the disputed outer rim sectors, Vextal declared. These systems have been claimed by the Federation for over 2 centuries, and human settlement there represents a violation of established galactic law. Dr. Kane looked up from his datapad and caught Jake's eye. They both knew that established galactic law was whatever the Federation said it was on any given day. The outer rim worlds that humans had settled were barren rocks that no Federation species had ever shown any interest in until humans proved they could be made habitable. The presentation continued with a detailed breakdown of military restrictions. Humanity would be required to reduce its naval forces by 70%, decommission all weapons of mass destruction, and submit all new military technologies to Federation oversight before deployment. Human colonies would be limited to defensive capabilities only, with no weapon systems capable of threatening Federation member worlds. Lisa Barnes's jaw tightened as she listened to the military demands. She had spent her entire career building the human space navy from a collection of converted mining ships into a force capable of defending Earth's growing sphere of influence. The idea of dismantling most of that work to satisfy alien politicians made her stomach turn. But the worst was yet to come. A representative of the Vegan Collective, a species that resembled humanoid lizards with elaborate feathered crests, stood to address the final requirement. The Federation has conducted extensive psychological and genetic analysis of human behavior patterns, the Vegan delegate announced in a voice like rustling leaves. Your species displays concerning levels of aggression, territorial expansion, and resistance to authority. To ensure galactic stability, all humans will undergo genetic modification procedures to reduce these problematic traits. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of that statement sank in. They weren't just asking humanity to limit its expansion or reduce its military. They wanted to fundamentally alter what it meant to be human. Dr. Kane's datapad slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the table. Lisa Barnes's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon before she caught herself. But Jake Morrison simply sat in silence, his expression unchanged. The various alien delegates began exchanging what Jake assumed were congratulatory glances. In their experience, this was the moment when newly contacted species realized the futility of resistance. Every other civilization that had faced similar terms had eventually capitulated, choosing Federation membership over isolation and potential conflict. Vextal spread his arms again, this time in a gesture that Jake's cultural briefings had identified as magnanimous victory. We understand that these terms may seem restrictive, but they are necessary for the greater good of galactic civilization. Once humanity has proven its commitment to peace and stability, these restrictions may be reconsidered. In future negotiations, you have one standard galactic cycle to provide your response. The Chancellor clearly expected this to be the beginning of a lengthy bargaining process. Perhaps humanity would request modifications to some of the terms, or ask for a longer timeline. To comply with the genetic modification requirements, maybe they would try to negotiate better trade arrangements in exchange for accepting the military restrictions. Jake Morrison stood slowly, his movement causing conversations around the table to fall silent. Every alien eye in the chamber focused on him as he straightened his jacket and looked directly at Chancellor Vextal. We decline, Jake said simply. The two words hung in the air like a physical presence. Several of the alien delegates began chattering in their native languages, their translators struggling to keep up with the excited exchanges. Vextal's mandibles clicked rapidly in what Jake recognized as agitation. Perhaps you misunderstood. The terms, the Altarian delegate interjected, its tentacles writhing in the tank. This is not a negotiation. This is an opportunity for humanity to join galactic civilization peacefully. The alternative is isolation from all civilized worlds. Jake picked up his briefcase and nodded to his companions. Lisa Barnes stood immediately, her hand once again moving toward her weapon. Dr. Kane gathered his datapad and files, his hand shaking slightly with either fear or excitement. The terms are understood perfectly, Jake replied, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Our answer remains the same. We decline. With that, the human delegation turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Behind them, the sounds of alien voices rose in pitch and intensity as the reality of humanity's response began to sink in. No species had ever simply refused Federation membership. No civilization had ever walked away from the negotiating table without even attempting to bargain. As the doors hissed shut behind them, Jake Morrison smiled for the first time in months. The real negotiations were about to begin, and humanity would be conducting them from a position the Federation had never encountered before: complete independence. Captain Amy Foster was reviewing supply reports in her quarters aboard the UES Liberty when the priority message arrived. The small communication device on her desk chimed 3 times, indicating an emergency transmission from Earth Command. She set down her coffee and activated the secure channel, watching as Admiral Ben Clark's weathered face appeared on the holographic display. "Captain Foster, you are to implement Protocol 9 immediately," the Admiral said, without preamble. His voice carried the weight of decisions that would reshape human civilization. All human vessels are to withdraw from Federation space within 72 hours. No exceptions, no delays. Amy felt her stomach drop. Protocol 9 was the complete severance of all ties with the Galactic Federation. It was a contingency plan that every ship captain had been briefed on, but none had ever expected to use. "Sir, are you certain? We have trade agreements in progress, scientific exchanges, diplomatic—" "The negotiations have concluded, Captain," Admiral Clark interrupted. "Ambassador Morrison walked away from the table 6 hours ago. We are officially rejecting Federation membership and all associated agreements. Every human ship, station, and outpost in Federation territory is to return to Earth-controlled space immediately." The transmission ended, leaving Amy staring at the blank display. Around her, the Liberty hummed with the familiar sounds of a ship in deep space, but everything felt different now. In a matter of hours, humanity had gone from potential Federation members to complete outsiders. She activated the ship's communication system and called for all senior officers to report to the bridge. Within minutes, Commander Steve Rodriguez and Lieutenant Katie Bell had joined her in the Liberty's command center. The bridge was compact but efficient, designed for long-range exploration rather than combat, though recent modifications had added weapon systems that rivaled anything in the Federation fleet. "We have new orders," Amy announced, displaying the withdrawal directive on the main screen. "We are leaving Federation space and returning to Earth immediately. All human vessels throughout the galaxy are doing the same." Steve Rodriguez leaned forward in his chair, his dark eyes studying the star charts that showed their current position deep in Altarian territory. "Captain, we're 3 weeks out from the nearest human system. What about our research station on Kepler 7? We have 40 scientists there working with Altarian colleagues." "They'll be recalled along with everyone else," Amy replied, though she shared his concerns. The Kepler Medical Station had been humanity's most successful joint venture with Federation species. Dr. Helen Wright's team there had developed treatments for diseases that affected multiple alien species, work that had built enormous goodwill throughout Federation space. Katie Bell pulled up the latest intelligence reports on her console. As the ship's chief engineer, she understood better than most how interconnected human and Federation technologies had become. "Captain, there's something else to consider. Our quantum drive technology has been licensed to over 50 Federation worlds. Our medical equipment is keeping 3 different species from going extinct. If we withdraw all cooperation, then they'll have to figure out alternatives," Amy said firmly. "Our orders are clear. We withdraw everything, and we do it now." Across Federation space, similar conversations were taking place on dozens of human ships and stations. The Federation had grown accustomed to human efficiency and innovation, often taking for granted the steady flow of technological improvements and scientific breakthroughs that Earth's colonies provided. Now, all of that was ending. On the human, agricultural colony of New Eden, Director Paul Morris received his recall orders while standing in a field of modified grain that could grow in the harsh soil of vegan worlds. For 3 years, his team had worked to develop crops that could feed the rapidly expanding vegan population. The vegans had come to depend on these imports to prevent widespread famine on their overcrowded homeworld. Paul looked at the golden field stretching to the horizon and felt a mixture of pride and regret. Tomorrow, Federation officials would arrive to find empty facilities and sealed research data. The vegans would be left to solve their food crisis without human assistance. In the Zephyrian system, Dr. Nicole Adams was packing up her laboratory equipment when her Zephyrian research partner Clixvor entered the facility. The insectoid alien's mandibles clicked in what Nicole had learned to recognize as distress. "Dr. Adams, surely this withdrawal is temporary," Clixvor said through his translator. "Our work on faster-than-light communication is too important to abandon. We are weeks away from a breakthrough that could revolutionize galactic society." Nicole sealed the last container of research samples and turned to face her colleague. Over the past year, she had grown genuinely fond of Clixvor, despite their species' vast differences. His scientific curiosity and dedication reminded her of the best human researchers she had worked with. "I'm sorry, Clixivore," she said, checking her datapad to ensure all human research data had been wiped from the station's computers. This decision came from the highest levels of human government. All cooperation with Federation species is ending. But why? Clixivore's translator couldn't convey emotion, but Nicole could see the confusion in his compound eyes. "The Federation offered your species membership, protection, prosperity. Why would humanity refuse such generous terms?" Nicole paused at the laboratory door and looked back at the facility where she had spent some of the most productive months of her career. "Because the price of those generous terms was too high. The Federation wanted to change what makes us human. We decided we'd rather remain ourselves." Meanwhile, in Federation Council chambers on the capital world of Prime, emergency sessions were being called as reports flooded in from across known space. Human ships were departing from every system. Human colonies were going dark to outside communications. Trade agreements worth billions of credits were being terminated without notice. Chancellor Vextal stood before the assembled delegates, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks of strain. Reports from his intelligence network painted a picture that no one had anticipated. Humanity wasn't just withdrawing from Federation space, they were doing it with military precision and coordination that suggested months of planning. "This is clearly a negotiation tactic," announced the Altarian delegate, her tentacles writhing nervously in her tank. "They seek to pressure us into offering better terms. We need only wait for them to realize their mistake." But Thulvan, the Federation's chief economist, was studying data streams that told a different story. "Honorable delegates, I must point out some concerning facts. Human trade accounts for 29% of Federation commerce. Their technological innovations have become integral to 17 different planetary defense systems. Their medical advances are the only thing preventing extinction for the Tau Ceti species." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity wasn't just another minor species seeking Federation membership. Over the past century, they had quietly become essential to the Federation's continued prosperity and stability. On distant Earth, Admiral Ben Clark stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching as status reports arrived from across human space. Every ship was returning home. Every colony was severing ties with Federation worlds. Every scientific collaboration was ending. "Sir," reported Commander Frank Miller, his aide-de-camp, "we're receiving requests for clarification from several Federation worlds. They want to know if this withdrawal includes emergency medical assistance. The Centauri colonies are facing a plague outbreak that only human-developed treatments can cure." Admiral Clark studied the galactic map displayed on the main screen. Red indicators showed human forces pulling back to a defensive perimeter around Earth and its closest allies. Blue markers represented Federation territory, vast and seemingly powerful, but suddenly vulnerable in ways its leaders were only beginning to understand. "The withdrawal is complete," he said finally. "Humanity is no longer involved in Federation affairs in any capacity. They wanted us to submit to their authority. Instead, we choose independence." As the last human ships crossed into Earth-controlled space, the galaxy began to shift. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Federation faced the prospect of managing their civilization without the steady support of human innovation and determination. Behind the seemingly confident facade of their vast interstellar empire, cracks were already beginning to show. 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared from Federation space, and the consequences were spreading like cracks in a dam. Dr. Yelnara, the Altarian chief medical officer at Kepler Medical Station, floated in her tank as she reviewed the latest system failure reports. The station's life support systems were breaking down faster than her engineering team could repair them. The problems had started small. A ventilation unit here, a water recycler there. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with standard Federation replacement parts. But as the weeks passed, it became clear that the station's critical systems relied heavily on human-designed components that no other Federation species knew how to manufacture. "Doctor, we have another cascade failure in Section 7, reported Engineer Grixtel, a Zephyrian whose mandibles clicked with stress. The atmospheric processors are operating at 60% efficiency and dropping. We need to evacuate non-essential personnel within the next 72 hours. Yelnara's tentacles writhed in frustration. Kepler Medical Station had been the crown jewel of Federation medical research, treating patients from dozens of different species and developing cures for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. Now it was slowly dying, suffocated by its dependence on human technology that no one else understood. Similar scenes were playing out across Federation space. The quantum drive manufacturing facility on Vegan Prime had shut down completely when human-designed calibration equipment failed. Without replacement parts that only Earth's colonies produced, the facility that had supplied faster-than-light engines to half the Federation fleet was now useless. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades began experiencing massive delays. Captain Zolkar of the merchant vessel Star Harvest found himself stranded at a refueling station in the Centauri system when the automated docking computers crashed. The station's AI system had been upgraded with human software 6 months ago, and now no one knew how to reset it. "This is impossible," Zolkar muttered to his first officer as they watched other ships facing the same problem. "How did we become so dependent on one species without realizing it?" The answer was simple but embarrassing for Federation leadership. Human technology worked better than anything else available. It was more efficient, more reliable, and easier to maintain. Over the past century, Federation worlds had gradually replaced their older systems with human designs, often without thinking about the long-term implications. On the Federation capital world of Prime, economist Thulven presented his quarterly report to an increasingly worried council. The numbers were worse than anyone had predicted. Trade volume had dropped by 35%. Industrial production was down 28%. Agricultural yields on 17 different worlds were failing without human-developed fertilizers and pest control systems. "The situation is becoming critical," Thulven announced to the assembled delegates. "Our preliminary estimates of human economic impact were grossly understated. Their withdrawal has created shortages in everything from medical supplies to starship components." Chancellor Vextal's exoskeleton had lost some of its usual gleam, and his mandibles clicked constantly as he processed the reports. The Federation had always prided itself on being self-sufficient, but the reality was proving far different. Meanwhile, intelligence reports from the Outer Rim territories painted an even more disturbing picture. Independent trader Captain Rexenal had been among the first to venture into the regions where humans had withdrawn. What he found there challenged everything the Federation thought they knew about human capabilities. The human colony of New Geneva had been a modest mining outpost when the Federation had last surveyed it. Now Rexenal stared in amazement at a massive orbital station that dwarfed anything in Federation space. The structure bristled with advanced technology and housed what appeared to be hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. How did they build something like this so quickly? Rexenal wondered aloud as his ship's sensors struggled to catalog the station's impressive specifications. The energy readings alone suggested power generation capabilities that exceeded most Federation homeworlds. Similar reports arrived from other human territories. The mining colony of New Pittsburgh had somehow terraformed 3 additional worlds in the same system. The agricultural settlement of New Kansas was producing crop yields that defied everything Federation scientists thought they knew about planetary farming. Most shocking of all were the reports of human contact with non-Federation species. The independent Rigel Confederacy, which had resisted Federation membership for over a century, had signed an exclusive trade agreement with Earth. The nomadic wanderer fleets, who had never aligned with any government, were now providing escort services for human merchant ships. Dr. Nexavara, the Federation's chief xenobiologist, studied these reports with growing alarm. "The humans aren't just surviving outside Federation space," she informed the Science Council. "They're thriving in ways that should be impossible. Their expansion rate has increased by 200% since withdrawal. Their technological development appears to have accelerated rather than slowed." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Federation membership hadn't been offering humanity protection and guidance. It had been holding them back. Commander. Steve Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching as another group of human ships arrived from the Outer Rim territories. Each vessel brought reports of new discoveries, new worlds, new possibilities that opened up when humans were free to pursue their own path. The Proxima expedition found another 7 habitable worlds, reported Lieutenant Katie Bell as she joined him at the viewing port. Dr. Nicole Adams thinks her new FTL communication system will be ready for testing within the month, and we've received formal requests for alliance from 6 different non-Federation species. Steve nodded, though part of him still found it hard to believe how quickly things had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been supplicants begging for Federation membership. Now they were building something entirely new, something that other species wanted to join. The Federation's response to these developments was predictable. They increased patrols along the borders of human space and issued warnings to non-aligned species about the dangers of dealing with unstable human governments. But their threats carried less weight now that everyone could see how well humanity was doing on its own. 3 Federation member species had already formally requested meetings with human representatives. The Tau Ceti colonies were desperate for medical assistance that only human technology could provide. The Wolf 359 Confederation wanted access to human agricultural techniques to solve their growing food crisis. The Ross 128 Alliance was interested in human defensive technologies after a series of pirate attacks that Federation forces had failed to stop. Each request was politely declined. Humanity was no longer interested in being the Federation's problem solver. They had their own civilization to build. Chancellor Vextal called another emergency session as reports continued to arrive from across Federation space. System failures were cascading faster than replacement solutions could be found. Member worlds were openly questioning why they needed Federation oversight when humanity had proven that independence led to prosperity rather than disaster. Perhaps we should reconsider our position, suggested the Vegan delegate, her feathered crest drooping with exhaustion. The humans have demonstrated that they can succeed without us. Maybe we need them more than they need us. But Vextal wasn't ready to admit defeat. The Federation had maintained order in the galaxy for over 5 centuries. They couldn't allow one stubborn species to undermine everything they had built, even if that species was proving more capable than anyone had expected. The Chancellors. Pride would cost the Federation dearly in the months to come, as the ripple effects of humanity's withdrawal continued to spread throughout civilized space. 1 year after humanity's departure from Federation space, Chancellor Vextal stood before a closed session of the Galactic Council that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. The ornate chamber that once projected confidence and authority now felt hollow, its massive displays showing star charts marked with alarming trends that no one wanted to acknowledge publicly. "What you are about to hear cannot leave this chamber," Vextal announced, his mandibles clicking with barely controlled anxiety. "The intelligence reports I am sharing today represent a fundamental threat to Federation stability and must be treated with absolute secrecy." The assembled delegates shifted nervously in their seats. Even the usually calm Altarian representative showed signs of distress, her tentacles moving in agitated patterns within her containment tank. They had all seen the economic reports, witnessed the system failures, and received complaints from their home governments about the ongoing crisis caused by human withdrawal. Intelligence Director Kexnell activated the main holographic display, showing a detailed map of human space that had been compiled from reconnaissance missions over the past year. What the map revealed sent a chill through every delegate in the room. "Honorable Council members, our surveillance indicates that humanity has not merely survived outside Federation guidance," Kexnall reported in a voice that struggled to maintain professional composure. "They have expanded their controlled territory by 47%. They have established colonies on 23 new worlds. Their industrial output has increased by 60%, and their military capabilities now rival our own." The Vegan delegate's feathered crest flattened against her skull in a display of shock. "This is impossible. No species can achieve such growth rates without Federation infrastructure and support. Your intelligence must be flawed. But Kexnel continued with more disturbing revelations. Captain Frank Miller of Human Exploration Command has discovered and claimed 17 new star systems in the past 6 months alone. Their survey techniques are more advanced than anything we possess. Dr. Nicole Adams has successfully tested faster-than-light communication technology that surpasses our best systems by a factor of 3. Their messages now travel across the galaxy in hours rather than weeks. The implications were staggering. Communication delays had always been one of the Federation's primary tools for maintaining central control. If humans could coordinate their activities across vast distances in real time, they possessed a strategic advantage that could reshape galactic politics. More intelligence reports followed, each one worse than the last. Human agricultural colonies were not just feeding themselves but producing surplus food that they traded with non-Federation species. Human mining operations had developed techniques that extracted resources from previously unusable asteroid fields. Human shipyards were producing vessels with capabilities that Federation engineers insisted were theoretically impossible. How are they advancing so quickly? Demanded the Tau Cetian representative, his scaled features showing the stress that had become common among Federation officials. Without access to our research networks and shared knowledge base, they should be stagnating, not accelerating their development. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Veltara, the Federation's chief technology analyst, had spent months studying captured samples of human equipment. Her findings challenged fundamental assumptions about how technological progress worked. The humans appear to have a different approach to innovation, Dr. Veltara explained, her voice heavy with implications she clearly didn't want to accept. Federation species traditionally advance through collective research guided by central planning. Humans encourage individual initiative and competitive development. Their system produces breakthrough innovations at a rate we cannot match. Chancellor Vextol's exoskeleton darkened with stress hormones as he processed this information. The Federation's entire philosophy was based on the idea that central control and collective decision-making produced better outcomes than individual initiative. If humans were proving that wrong, it undermined everything the Federation stood for. But the worst news was yet to come. Intelligence reports showed that humanity was no longer isolated in their rejection of Federation authority. The independent Vegan colonies had signed a mutual defense pact with Earth. The Centauri republics were considering leaving the Federation entirely to join what was now being called the Human Commonwealth. 3 of our own member species have formally requested permission to withdraw from Federation membership, Kexnel reported, his voice barely above a whisper. The Tau Cetians claim that Federation policies prevent them from accessing human medical technology they need to survive. The Wolf 359 Confederation wants to adopt human agricultural methods that could double their food production. The Rossi were 128. Alliance believes human defensive systems would provide better protection than Federation guarantees. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations as delegates realized the full scope of the crisis. The Federation wasn't just losing economic efficiency due to human withdrawal. They were losing member species who saw humanity's success and wanted the same opportunities for themselves. Ambassador Crixtel of the Altarian delegation floated forward in her tank, her tentacles writhing with agitation. Surely these species can be convinced to remain. We simply need to offer them better terms, more autonomy, reduced restrictions. That approach has already been attempted, Chancellor Vextel replied grimly. The Tau Cetians were offered a 50% reduction in their Federation contributions. They declined, stating that they wanted complete freedom to pursue their own development path. The Wolf 359 Confederation was promised exclusive access to Federation agricultural technology. They responded that human techniques were already superior to anything we could provide. The truth was becoming impossible to deny. The Federation's carefully constructed image of superiority was crumbling. Species that had accepted Federation authority for centuries were beginning to question why they needed oversight when humanity had proven that independence led to prosperity and growth. Admiral Zurkax, the Federation's military commander, provided the final blow to what remained of the Council's confidence. Our strategic analysis indicates that humanity's military capabilities now exceed our own in several key areas. Their ships are faster, their weapons more efficient, and their coordination superior. In a direct conflict, victory would be uncertain at best. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. The Galactic Federation had maintained peace through overwhelming military superiority for over 5 centuries. If they could no longer guarantee victory against a single species that had been considered primitive just 2 years earlier, their entire power structure was at risk. Dr. Nexavara, the Federation's xenobiologist, offered the most damning assessment of all. Our fundamental assumptions about human psychology were incorrect. We believed their aggressive tendencies and resistance to authority were weaknesses that needed correction. Instead, these traits appear to be the source of their remarkable adaptability and innovation. By trying to suppress these characteristics, we would have destroyed the very qualities that make them so successful. The irony was bitter. The Federation had offered to genetically modify humans to make them more compliant and peaceful, believing this would benefit galactic civilization. Instead, humanity's rejection of those modifications had allowed them to demonstrate capabilities that surpassed anything the Federation had achieved. Chancellor Vextal looked around the chamber at faces showing fear, confusion, and growing desperation. The Federation's response to humanity's withdrawal had been to wait patiently for the inevitable collapse that never came. Instead, they found themselves watching their own civilization slowly fall apart, while humanity built something better in the void they had left behind. The time for waiting was over. The Federation would need to take action soon, or risk losing everything they had built over the past 5 centuries. But what action could they take against a species that had already proven they didn't need Federation approval to thrive among the stars? 2 years had passed since Jake Morrison walked out of the Federation Council chambers, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before that historic moment. Ambassador Lynn Parker stood at the podium of the newly constructed Commonwealth Assembly Hall on New Geneva Station, addressing representatives from 47 different species that had chosen independence over Federation control. The hall itself was a marvel of human engineering and alien artistry combined. Crystalline structures from the Rigel Confederacy formed the ceiling, while Wanderer fleet metalworking created support columns that seemed to flow like liquid frozen in time. The atmosphere was carefully controlled to accommodate the breathing requirements of dozens of different species, something the Federation had never managed to achieve in their own chambers. Today marks the 2nd anniversary of humanity's decision to chart our own course among the stars, Lynn announced, her voice carrying clearly through universal translators that worked more efficiently than anything the Federation had ever developed. What began as one species' refusal to accept limitations has become a movement that spans half the known galaxy. The assembled delegates included representatives from species that had never been welcome in Federation space. The nomadic Wanderer fleets had found permanent homes within Commonwealth territory. The insectoid hive clusters had established peaceful relationships with human colonies after centuries of Federation suppression. Even the mysterious crystal singers from the Galactic Rim had sent an observer to learn about this new form of interstellar cooperation. Admiral Carl Dyer Hayes watched the proceedings from the military observation section, still amazed at how quickly everything had changed. The Commonwealth fleet now consisted of over 2,000 vessels representing technologies from dozens of different species. Human ships worked alongside Rigel destroyers, Wanderer scoutcraft, and Centauri heavy cruisers in formations that would have been impossible under Federation rigid hierarchy. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Dr. Peter Kane, now serving as Commonwealth Science Director, had spent months developing protocols that allowed different species to share research without the bureaucratic oversight that had strangled innovation under Federation rule. The results spoke for themselves. Commonwealth scientists had made more breakthrough discoveries in the past year than the Federation had achieved in the previous decade. Meanwhile, in Federation space, the slow collapse continued with devastating efficiency. Chancellor Vextal had been removed from office 6 months earlier after the Tau Ceti crisis reached its breaking point. The Taucedian species faced extinction from a genetic plague that only human-developed treatments could cure, but Federation regulations prevented any contact with Commonwealth worlds. When 3 million Taucedians died waiting for Federation, bureaucrats to approve emergency medical aid, 7 more species formally requested withdrawal from Federation membership. The new chancellor, Kexeral, had inherited a government that was hemorrhaging members and facing economic collapse. The Federation's desperate attempts to maintain control had only accelerated their decline. Trade restrictions imposed on worlds that dealt with Commonwealth species had backfired spectacularly when those same worlds discovered they could get better prices and more reliable service from Commonwealth merchants. Military patrols sent to intimidate non-aligned species into avoiding human contact had been embarrassed when Commonwealth forces appeared to escort traders safely through disputed territory. Captain Frank Miller had just returned from his latest exploration mission when he received an urgent message from Earth Command. His team had discovered something in the far reaches of the galactic spiral that would change everything once again. The ancient ruins on Kepler 442b contained technology that appeared to be millions of years old, far predating any known civilization. On the Sio, archaeological team believes this civilization achieved faster-than-light travel without any of the energy requirements our current systems need, Frank reported to Admiral Hayes during their debriefing. If we can understand their methods, it could revolutionize space travel for every species in the galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. While the Federation had restricted human expansion and research, humanity's freedom to explore had led them to discoveries that could benefit all intelligent life. Under Federation control, such ruins would have been studied for decades by committees before any practical applications were approved. Commonwealth scientists were already working on prototypes. Dr. Nicole Adams had become something of a legend throughout Commonwealth space. Her faster-than-light communication network now connected every Commonwealth world, allowing instant coordination across thousands of light years. Her latest project involved developing humanitarian aid protocols that could deliver medical supplies to any world in need within hours rather than months. The Federation's response to these developments had shifted from arrogance to desperation. Secret diplomatic channels had been opened requesting Commonwealth assistance with various crises. Each request was evaluated on its own merits, with aid provided when it served humanitarian purposes rather than political ones. Lieutenant Katie Bell, now serving as chief engineer for the Commonwealth Development Corps, had overseen the terraforming of 12 new worlds in the past year alone. Her techniques were so efficient that non-aligned species were requesting Commonwealth assistance with their own planetary development projects. Each success story spread the word that alternatives to Federation membership not only existed but produced better results. The tipping point came when the Altarian Trade Consortium, one of the Federation's core member species, announced their intention to withdraw from Federation membership and join the Commonwealth. Their decision was based purely on economic factors. Commonwealth trade agreements offered better terms, faster dispute resolution, and access to technologies that the Federation couldn't match. Chancellor Kexeral called an emergency session of the remaining Federation Council, but only half the expected delegates appeared. 3 species had withdrawn their ambassadors entirely. 4 more had sent junior representatives with no authority to make decisions, and 2 member worlds were in open rebellion against Federation tax policies. "We must face reality," announced Dr. Thexnall, the Federation's new economic advisor. "Our civilization model is failing. Species that join the Commonwealth report economic growth rates 3 times higher than Federation averages. Their scientific advancement exceeds our own. Their quality of life indicators surpass anything we have achieved." The final blow came when the Federation received an official communication from Commonwealth Prime Minister Jake Morrison. The message was broadcast simultaneously to every world in Federation space, ensuring that all citizens could hear humanity's response to 2 years of Federation posturing. "The Commonwealth extends an invitation to all Federation worlds to join our alliance of free species," Jake announced from his office on New Geneva Station. "We offer partnership without domination, cooperation without submission, and growth without artificial limitations. Any species that chooses freedom over control will find a welcome place among the stars we share. Within days of the broadcast, formal withdrawal requests flooded Federation headquarters. The Wolf 359 Confederation became the 15th species to join the Commonwealth. The Ross 128 Alliance followed within hours. Even the proud Vegan Collective began negotiations to abandon Federation membership in favor of Commonwealth partnership. Chancellor Kexrel stood alone in the empty council chambers, watching as Federation space shrank on the holographic displays. Member worlds that had accepted Federation authority for centuries were choosing independence, inspired by humanity's example and attracted by the prosperity they witnessed in Commonwealth territory. The Galactic Federation would continue to exist for several more years, but its time as the dominant power in known space was over. In walking away from Federation demands, humanity hadn't just secured their own freedom. They had demonstrated that alternatives to centralized control were not only possible, but superior in every measurable way. As new species continued to join the Commonwealth and Federation influence dwindled, one fact became clear throughout the May galaxy. Sometimes the most powerful response to an ultimatum was simply to walk away and build something better elsewhere. Humanity had done exactly that, and in the process they had rewritten the future of galactic civilization itself.